Retired Lieutenant General Doug Lute for more on this. Hi, Doug. So Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Kane says more U.S. troops are headed to the region. Does that tell you anything about what they're bracing for here?
Well, you know, when he talks about more troops, he didn't mention what types of troops. And I think probably most likely he's talking about troops that perform some sort of defensive role. So think air defense capabilities and so forth, or Patriot missile batteries and so forth. So these kinds of forces would aim to diminish the impact on existing U.S. bases in the region. So we saw the tragic casualties incurred by American troops in Kuwait. That's probably because that particular facility was not as well protected as the chairman would like. So my guess is the inflow of U.S. troops has mostly to do with defensive systems.
And Secretary Hegseth says they're focused on Iran's long-range strike capabilities. How critical is that?
Well, it's really critical because this is the means by which Iran causes other partners of the U.S. to pay a price, right? It's these long-range missile systems that can range across the region and, frankly, all the way into southeastern Europe that really provide Iran the potential to broaden the conflict. And by way of broadening the conflict, bring increased partner and allied pressure against the U.S. So this is really important.
And Secretary Hegseth insists it will not be a forever war. Is it early enough to say so?
Well, if we don't introduce ground troops, then the rheostat, the switch here is very much in our control. That is, we can simply stop striking. We can call the air campaign complete. It's really the introduction of ground troops that introduce the potential for prolonged conflict, like in Iraq and Afghanistan. So if that's off the table, if we're not introducing ground forces, then we really have at hand the controls for the duration of the conflict.
The IDF says it's striking Hezbollah targets in Lebanon this morning. Earlier, we saw some major explosions in Beirut. So how significant is the way this is escalating?
Well, I think this is really interesting. You know, the introduction or the reintroduction of Hezbollah as a threat in the region, and in particular to northern Israel. You know, it wasn't that many months ago that Israel declared Hezbollah defeated, much as it's declared the Hamas forces in Gaza defeated, or as we declared Iranian nuclear capability obliterated. And as it turns out, these capabilities are much harder to actually snuff out completely and eliminate than they are to simply be degraded. So the fact that Lebanese Hezbollah is back in the fight, I think, is telling.
And UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he'll allow the U.S. to use British military bases to strike Iran. Do you expect to see other U.S. allies playing a role in this moving forward?
Well, the British have a very strategically located base in Cyprus. So that's important because that ground facility provides logistics and so forth that the U.S. can use. Other American allies don't have the sort of base structure that we have. So we've seen a number of U.S. bases across the region struck. There are a few allied bases, but none which provide a critical capability to the U.S. air campaign. The British base in Cyprus, however, is a nice asset.
China and Russia are condemning the strikes and the killing of the Ayatollah. What happens if they get involved in Iran's defense?
Well, Russia's got its hands full right now, just surviving in the fight in Ukraine, their war in Ukraine. I think the China angle is very interesting because, you know, over the last decade, China has invested significantly in capabilities, both military capabilities and civil capabilities like transportation networks and mass communications inside Iran. So Iran has benefited from this relationship with China, and the payoff to China has been cheap oil. About 90% of Iran's illegal under sanctioned oil exports go to China, and China pays a cut rate price for that energy. So that one of the indirect repercussions, one of the aftershocks of the air campaign that's underway now will be its impact on China.
General Doug Lute, we appreciate your time as always. Thank you.